Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another expert panel discussion on organisational behaviour, looking specifically at organisational structure and design. My name's Trevor Hartley, and I'm joined on our expert panel by two very distinguished gentlemen in their own right, Patrick Canine and Nick Kitchen. Gentlemen, would you mind introducing yourselves, please?
Hi, my name is Pat Canine. In terms of my background, I've worked for many, many years in an international HR position, covering countries as wide as the US, Far East, and Europe, obviously. In more recent years, I have been engaged in consulting, and I have a professorship at the University of Limerick in organisational development. Most recently, I've written a book on organisational design, an essential lever in managing change.
Hello, I'm Nick Kitchen. I'm an executive coach and facilitator and consultant. Had a first career with a big multinational advertising agency and was head of new business for that company, and worked across a whole range of different cultures and types of interesting characters. And then my second career has been, as I mentioned, as a coach and consultant, working largely with multinationals across highly diverse, challenging marketplaces and cultures, and with some of the challenges that are not dissimilar to some of the ones we're covering. So looking forward to this case study.
Thank you, gentlemen. Well, let's jump straight into it. We've got a great case study here looking at organisational structure and design. Company Langdon and Matthews, they set themselves up as a financial services and professional services firm. They've been growing the last 15 years. Their strategy has been to go to local environments, look for high-quality practices that are doing well in the local environments and acquire them to form somewhat of a global conglomerate of these small practices. They have got to the point now where in the last 2 years their revenues have started to subside, but their operating costs continue to increase. Their managing partner, Michael Bellamy, has come and he has said, well, we need to be doing something around this. We need to be looking to get more of a global approach to our clients. Some of their clients have been engaging them and been getting mixed signals from different regions, different countries, as well as the fact that it appears where they go for new proposals and new businesses for international clients, there seems to be a bit of a disconnect in terms of how they're doing it. So he's looking for a structure in terms of how the organisation should look that would best suit their strategy moving forward, which is clearly one of going more to the international markets. So, Pat, perhaps I could start off with you. Your first thoughts on this case study, what were some of the things that jumped out at you?
Well, the first thing that strikes you about the case is that rather than it being a global organisation with a global attitude, it seems to be more like a loose confederation of national organisations, obviously operating under one banner, but in truth they tend to be individualised geographic silos, where each one seems to be very successful in their own right. But operating as a global organisation, there seems to be an agreement that yes, we will work together, we will coalesce, we will go after new business opportunities. But when push comes to shove, they tend to focus really on their own national markets. And so that's the first thing, this notion of a loose confederation. And the second piece around that, if you look at the compensation or the total pay for the leaders in these businesses, many of whom were owner-managed before they were taken over. The structure of their pay, there's a substantial amount of pay is driven by local results. And at the end of the day, I think you get what you pay for.
So you've got a situation here where the organisation as a whole, the practice, is trying to move forward onto a global basis, but it's seemingly being held back by these little national firms or national practices that are acting more in a silo than in terms of an actual whole global approach and thought process. Nick, your thoughts on the situation?
Well, I think it's a classic situation, the tension between this, the global tension and a global perspective and local demands and local needs. As a leader of any multinational global organisation, you're managing tensions all the time. You are a tension manager, I think. So, as Pat said, if they are remunerated and rewarded for really effectively still, managing their local area, then why would they change? As the old WIFM comes to mind, WIFM, what's in it for me? What's in it for them to change? So I think it asks of the CEO that firstly, to really clarify where their future is. And we've heard that their future is with multinational clients, international clients. And then he has to take some fairly robust decisions and which we can discuss further about what does that look like, what does that feel like, and how does he engage that level of collaboration across the whole piece with all these people.
I think, Nick, just touching on what you're saying there, you've been in a number of situations where you've been engaged by multinational firms, including professional services firms, not far off from what's happening here.
Absolutely.
And I think one of the key considerations that one needs to bear in mind over here is the whole, is this something that we really buy into?
Mm-hmm.
Is this something of substance, or is it just a form? And I think from the case study we can see that Inform, the managing partners of the various offices, are buying in and they say, yes, we want to do global, we want to be a part of this bigger practice. But in substance, they're quite resistant when they get asked to pool resources, when they get asked to collaborate from a talent perspective. They seem to be quite resistant to that. In terms of your understanding of what you've seen just out there in practice, how does one deal with a situation like this where you're really trying to move the organization forward, and yet there are these pockets of resistance where it's not outright, it's not coming out there and saying we don't agree. In form they're agreeing, but in substance there's quite a resistance.
Well, again, question one would be, has he painted a really clear picture of what the future looks like? If that's clear and the people are bought into this, but their behaviours are still, so there's a nod that's a public nod, but actually the behaviours are different. Actually, my experience is people who make these type of organisations work globally is they may have to take some really tough decisions. There's an old adage really is, the first thing you do with an invention is shoot the inventor. And that's a bit tough, but there might be something about, are you really with us on this particular bus, which looks like this now? And if not, then we may have to have some robust discussions. And quite, seriously, there may well be some second-tier people who are more committed to that you might want to encourage and bring forward. And then the obvious other part is they wholly own all these offices. A review of their incentives and compensation, I think, needs to be aligned to their strategy. I mean, it's at the moment, if they're serious about going after global clients, then the incentives should be in place to support that.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but there are a couple of managing partners here in the various local offices, and what you're saying is perhaps some of their heads should just be on the chopping block. In order to move the organisation forward, taking into consideration the fact that they're very comfortable, they were managing their own practices, this is what they've been doing for so long, there needs to be some kind of change. Pat, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that he may be facing up to some tough choices, but there are dangers in that as well, because these people have run their own businesses nationally, that they've shown the competence to be able to build a business, a pretty robust business within the context of that country. That person may have a lot of client loyalties, so that if you shoot the individual, then you may lose some of those businesses. On the other hand, Nick is absolutely right. You cannot be held to ransom on all of this. But I was at a meeting one day where I thought it was very, very powerful, where the chief executive said to some managers who were behaving this way, and it captured the moment, gentlemen, the train is leaving the station. You're either on the train or you're on the platform. You must decide, and you must decide now. Okay,
fantastic. So what I'm hearing in this scenario is, firstly, as you've both painted a very clear picture, we need to have the strategy, the vision going forward, key deliverables, key behaviours that are going to support that decision to become this international global practice. We need to make sure that the right people are in the right positions, give a stern message if need be, and possibly, if things aren't going according to plan, be ready to make some tough decisions. So assuming that's the case, let's look at what our learners have had in terms of the case study to make a decision. They've been given 3 scenarios. The first scenario is to restructure the practice in terms of a regional structure. So you have divisional heads in charge of the US, in charge of European, Middle East and African regions, and then in charge of South America. So that's one of the recommendations. Decentralized to local management in these regions. Thoughts on that, gentlemen? Are we actually getting anywhere with that solution, or are we just taking it one step up but not the full solution? Nick, your thoughts on that?
I think again, it's you could almost compound the problem if you're not careful. The problem with these big, apparently, homogenous in some ways regions where, okay, we have APAC or EMEA or whatever, however they want to do it, is there was phenomenal diversity still within those. There was phenomenal regionality within there as well. And then you can often have challenges between the regions as well. You can compound the problem and have a similar sort of challenge. So I think that to me is only a partial solution and probably not the best solution. It's what I'm hearing is, and what global clients are saying is, there is a lack of consistency and professionalism across the whole piece. We think and work in an integrated way across the world. We need you to step up to plate and match that. And the professional service firm or financial advisory firm that doesn't do that will be left behind. So I think the regional structure is a step in the right direction, but no, I think it falls short.
Okay. In terms of the next possible scenario is to create a product or service structure. Pat, would this be a structure which would be appealing in the scenario we face?
I think there are some advantages. Clearly, the advantages go along the lines that whoever is in charge of, let's say, audit or tax advice can drive a greater degree of consistency across those organisations in those countries. But from a client standpoint, the client often doesn't know whom to contact. I want someone who's going to holistically look after my business in this particular country. I don't want to go to A to talk about my tax problems or my tax advice, B for audit issues, and C for advice in terms of that. I need a go-to person who can take these services and integrate those services against my needs. And I think that the second option has me just scratching my head wondering, to whom should I go at a point in time? So it does drive consistency, but it does, from a client standpoint, it's certainly not the optimal solution, I think.
So having looked at scenario A, not really applicable. Scenario B, not ideal. We're left with a scenario C, which is a more complicated matrix structure where you're looking at product and service as well as regional. Pat, in terms of what is some of behavior that could break down or support this matrix structure that the organisation, LMN, would have to be very cognizant of as moving forward?
I think there are a number of things. I think there are some mechanical things, not least of which is that the two joint bosses who now set the priorities for the individual, that they meet, they talk, because what they're looking for is the best outcome for everybody concerned. The extent to which any one of them behaves in a parochial way certainly drives huge stress on the part of the receiving manager in that regard. Very, very stressful for that individual. So organisations who make matrix work really invest time in terms of sharing and agreeing priorities, agreeing performance reviews, so that it isn't just me doing a performance review and somehow creating an image that I actually have more impact on you and your career and on promotion decisions. That's a shared activity. Organisations who do this really well, at the top level, people like Unilever, people like Procter & Gamble, they've made a science out of understanding that you have to have that level of collaboration and cooperation with each other. And they do that really well.
Fantastic. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it from our panel of experts. The matrix structure, definitely the most optimal, but the key challenge is how do we get the communication happening and the organisational behaviour supporting that. To Pat and Nick, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.